So with the market off big here, day two, focus is yet again turning to the Fed. The 36th annual NABE Economic Policy Conference underway in Washington, D.C., where Federal Reserve Vice Chairman Richard Clarida is expected to speak. And Yahoo Finance's Brian Cheung joins us live from D.C. with the latest. Brian.
Hi, so Fed Vice Chairman Rich Clarida just made remarks at the NABE conference, as you just mentioned, and a few kind of news-breaking comments on the coronavirus. He said that the disruption they're referring to in China could spill over to, quote, the rest of the global economy. But he said it's still too soon to even speculate about either the size or the persistence of these effects, or whether they will lead to a material change in the outlook. He said that as for right now, at least, the coronavirus is likely to have a noticeable impact, at least on Chinese growth. But again, the key words to dissect here are material change in the outlook. This is the language that the Federal Reserve has used ever since it basically went on pause after 75 basis points of total cuts last year, and said they would basically hold pat until they saw any sort of material change in the U.S. economic outlook. So Rich Clarida's remarks today kind of signaling to the markets that, at least for right now, there is no change really, at least in the Fed's thinking, for where it is right now, and that it'll likely hold rates steady as it heads into its next meeting. But it is a few weeks away when it'll make its next policy decision. That is on March 18. So at least for right now, the Federal Reserve not necessarily saying there's too much of an onus to cut rates in response to the coronavirus updates. But again, that's the update from here down in D.C. from the Fed Vice Chair, the second in hand over at the central bank.
So, Brian Cheung, that seems to be the official word down there. I mean, investors, though, going very fearful about the coronavirus outbreak. Larry Kudlow was asked about on CNBC the idea of some sort of emergency step by the Fed coming in, the sort of whisper on the street. So outside of the conference, what are people saying?
Yeah, well, Larry Kudlow, again, the head of the Economic Council at the White House, basically saying that for right now, he still thinks the economy is okay, but said with regards to the Fed, quote, I don't expect the Fed, I'm not hearing the Fed's going to make any panic move, I guess, referring to some sort of emergency meeting outside or before that March 18 meeting to make a decision on rates, which is fairly unprecedented. But he did say that for a time, he's agreed that the Federal Reserve should be cutting rates. He said that he would like the Fed to be, quote, a little bolder on rates and also on the balance sheet, but said that's not necessarily due to the virus. That's just something the Trump administration has been calling on for some time. For what it's worth, though, it's not just the White House that's been calling for rates. Even those who formerly were part of the Federal Reserve had said maybe now is a time for the Federal Reserve to cut rates. You have Narayana Kocher-Lakota, who's the former head of the Minneapolis Fed district, saying yesterday in a Bloomberg op-ed that he would actually like the Fed to call an emergency meeting and cut by 25 or even as much as 50 basis points. So the calls are there, and you're also seeing that reflected in Fed funds futures markets, which headed into the weekend had only priced in about 11% chance of a rate cut in the Fed's March meeting, but has since increased to about 23% as I've just recently checked.
Brian Cheung, live from Washington, D.C.
Hey, investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.